Hello, everyone. I'm Annie Gibbins, and you're listening to Memoirs of Successful Women, the podcast where you get to hear candid conversations with fascinating women from around the globe who share aspects of their business and life journey, how they measure their success, and what they have learnt along the way. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Memoirs of Successful Women. Today, I am delighted to introduce to you Kavita Melwani, who is an empowerment coach. She's also a hypnotherapist and regressionist, and she's also a Reiki Master. She's done certified money, marketing, and soul coaching. She's one very interesting lady. She's also recently just completed a nutritional therapy practitioner program. So she's certainly loving learning all things natural therapy and empowerment, and she's going to have a lot to share with us today. She's certainly also a breath of fresh air for all of those empaths out there. So welcome to the program, Kavita.
Yes, thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
Terrific. So tell me about what your journey has been to do all of these qualifications. Where is your heart at the moment, and what has been the journey to get there?
Yeah, so I am a learner at heart, as you saw from when you're listing all the things that I've done. I'm always wanting to learn more, and I'm looking at learning even more, right? And so, uh, how did I get here? It's pretty long, so I'll make it short for you. So I am a family, I am a child of an immigrant family, first generation American. My parents immigrated here, and unlike a lot of the Indian immigration to the US, my family comes from a background that is a little different. So we are of Sindhi descent. And so Sindh is a state that no longer has a land in India. So when India and Pakistan were divided, Sindh went to Pakistan. And so a lot of the Sindhis that were Hindu in religion had to leave. So they just had to take what was on their back and immigrate. And so we're spread out really all over the world.
Mm.
And so there's no, a lot of my friends growing up who were of Indian descent said, "Oh, well, I'm going to go home
Mm.
and visit my family." But we didn't have a home to visit family, right? So that creates all kinds of lack of grounding, certain cultural norms that
Mm.
I didn't realize as a teenager or as a child growing up. And now, as an adult, with all the training and learning that I've done, realizing how it impacts
Yeah.
the community and culture and my personal being.
So what age did you immigrate to the US?
So I was actually born here.
Are you
So
born here?
yes, yeah.
That's amazing. So, okay, so your family came out from this land, and so, but it still affected you, even though you've been born in the US, because of is it because of the way you saw your parents respond in their conversation as they were raising you, as to what culture do they align to, so
Mhm.
knowing that they had nowhere to go back to show you where you come from, is that where it's,
Yeah, so I think a lot of it stems from that, right? There
yeah.
is the immigrant experience where whenever someone immigrates to a different country, they want to preserve some of their culture, right?
Mm.
And so there's a gripping that can happen,
Mm.
right? And that gripping being passed on to
Yeah.
their children. And then when you don't have a homeland, right, that creates even more of the sense like, well, we have to preserve this culture.
Yes.
Right? And so that energy is there in our interactions. They wanted as much as they could, although they were also trying to survive, right, in
Yeah.
the world. So it's a lot for them to do, and they did the best they could.
Of course. And so how did they therefore influence their culture for you growing up in the US? How was your family different to other families?
Yeah, so I grew up most of my childhood in South Texas,
Mhm.
which is a very small place. And the people we associated with, socialized with, were other Sindhi family, which there were like five.
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And that's who we socialized with. We did all the religious ceremonies at home. When my parents had enough money to build a house, they had a temple in the house. My mother would be hosting all these religious events, and we were given the message that, when you marry, you're going to marry someone from this culture,
Yes.
and then we would go to these Samalan things that they started organizing, right?
Yeah.
So like they would take their children hoping to preserve culture and, hopefully help make you meet someone, right? And marry
Exactly.
someone from the same, yeah, cultural background. So
But you're therefore in a very small pond, aren't you?
yes, yes. And that's what they wanted. And they want, and part of the culture is not educating women
Mm-hmm.
and marrying women young,
Right.
right? Because there's that, it's not true, but the sense that if you marry young, then you're still developing, your brain is still developing, right? Till you're 26, I think is the estimate right now. And so if you marry when you're 18 or 19 or 20, right, then you're going to adapt to that new family.
Yes.
And you're not going to question as much. And you're not going to have the independence, right? To leave if you want to. So,
Mm-hmm. All the things modern woman has an
mhm.
issue with.
Yes, yes.
So how did that work for you then? So you grow up in this culture and wanting to align to much of it by the sound of it, but then
Mhm.
also there's opposing cultures that then doesn't fit with a girl who's grown up in the US
Oh,
and
yeah. Yeah.
hasn't actually ever lived in India and is a very different, individual from her parents, obviously. So
Mhm.
did you end up marrying someone from your racial background?
So I did actually, even though I didn't want to.
Mm.
And so what ended up happening was I I love studying, right? We talked about that. I love
Yeah.
learning. And so I was really doing well in school and I wanted to be a doctor.
Right.
And I went up to my parents and I said, I want to be a doctor.
Yeah.
And they said, no. They said, no. You're not going to be a doctor. By the time you're done, you're going to be too old to get married. And so I started to rebel in other ways, as
Hmm.
can happen when you push. The
Hmm.
pushback happens eventually.
Yes.
And I started dating, even though I wasn't supposed to, behind their back. And they found out. And my father and mother were like, we had already picked out your husband. And I was like, what? I'm like, so,
What?
no, you know what? So eventually the compromise was that I get to go to a local a college nearby. And so I started with that. I didn't know what I was going to major in because I couldn't uh, be a doctor, right? So I tried different things. And so then that started that pattern of compromising myself, not really following my passion. When I took my first psychology class, that is when I was just
Wow.
amazed. I knew, like, I was like, I love I love this. I could take these classes over and over for the rest of my life and never be bored, right?
Yeah.
But in our culture, mental health is not that important.
Hmm.
Don't actually go. You don't actually work in mental health, right? If it's not valued, you don't work in mental health. So I started this convoluted kind of like, let me try this business, let me try that career, and just going through the motions of multiple iterations,
Mm.
right? And so I had started my first business in 2002-ish, and it was not what I'm doing now. It was just following what I thought
Your
would
parents would
my
like.
parents would like,
Yeah.
my family would like, right? And
Yeah.
so, yeah, so I
And
started
how
that
many
pattern.
how many people listening would have that same journey of that's right, this very strong pressure of this is what we want for you. You're our child. We love you more than anyone else. We want you to have this career or no
Mhm.
career so you can be the good wife and make us proud and all of those things. And then at the same time going, I want to please my parents, of course, but
Mhm.
I just cannot imagine myself getting married to a stranger at 18 and having no no career and no
Yes,
rights. Like,
yeah.
so what often happens is very interesting, and I
Mhm.
understand this journey
Mhm.
of dabbling in a few things that are kind of loosely connected. It's like you do this
Mhm.
tightrope walk of, okay, well, maybe I'll start this and they'll be sort of happy about that, but they're not really. It's kind of like in the middle,
No.
isn't it, right? So
Mhm.
it's not actually what they want, but it's not what you'd love. It's somewhere in the middle, which even often makes you less satisfied, right?
Right. So then no one's happy, right? You're trying to make them happy. Hopefully you're
I know.
happy.
It's
And
the
then it's like
ultimate
no one's happy.
compromise, but no one's happy with a compromise.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
So what was the first business? What was the disaster? What did you do in
Oh my
2002?
gosh. So the first business, so I ended up getting a master's in education
Mhm.
because I thought that that was a compromise, right? Because I love teaching
Yeah,
and I love learning,
yeah,
right? So I
great.
could teach and this way I could, have a career where because I got married in 2000 um where he travels for work and we've moved multiple times that was portable,
Yeah,
right? So again, fitting, but it wasn't really what I wanted to do, right? So the first business was tutoring. So I had a tutoring franchise.
right.
So I was tutoring people. Yeah. And then I had an event planning business after we moved. I had a handmade jewelry business because my parents are jewelers.
Fab.
And yes, I thought, well, I can make it this and I could work from home with kids because I have two boys, right?
Yeah,
So all this stuff.
yeah,
Compromise, compromise, compromise.
yeah.
Ignore, ignore, ignore.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So what was your solution for those who are sitting there in that compromise at the moment? Where did that take you? What was your moment that you went, enough compromising? This is not
Mhm.
where I should be.
So, as like many people, I've had moments, right? We have these turning points in our life if we pay attention.
Yeah.
Okay. And so, one of the turning points for me was I went to my first cousin's funeral,
Mm-hmm.
and he passed away at 31
Mm.
on Valentine's Day in 2011, and he was sick for a really long time, so it wasn't a shock,
Right.
right? It's a
Yeah.
very different experience, and to actually go to a funeral and see the person, right?
Mm.
And it's really important for the processing. And I was sitting there and thinking, that's going to be me one day,
Mm.
right? And is
Yeah.
that how I want to live my life? Is this what I want? And then there were all these stories of things that he did that I had no idea that he was doing,
No.
right? And
Yeah.
because he knew he didn't have time, he knew that his time was very limited,
Yeah.
right? He had a chronic cancer. It was going to be, it's not curable. It was not curable. So
Yeah.
he knew that he was going to die soon. He just didn't know. And so the things that he did, right? Paying it forward, all the random acts of kindness, the
Oh.
visiting, and I didn't know he was doing all this.
Mm.
And so I'm hearing him like, this is what I want. I want to be able to be at the end of my life and say that I've done what I've meant to do here. And
Yeah.
so that was one of the main turning points for me.
Amazing. It's an intentional bucket list that you
Yes.
yeah, right?
Hmm.
And we always think we've got more time or that will happen maybe one time. And so
Hmm.
that's it. When you have a life-threatening opportunity, moment, it's like, okay, well, it's now or never. It allows you to formulate such clarity, doesn't it? It hits like a light bulb, you
Yes. Yeah.
have to go, okay, well, that's right. How does this affect me? All right. So you had that moment, and then what did you do next?
So, well, I had to go home. Right? I went back home to, at that time, I lived in Texas, in Dallas. I went home and started looking at my life. I went to, actually, I remember going to networking event for my business, which at that time was a jewelry business, and I met a coach, right?
Right.
It's amazing how when you're ready, right?
Yeah.
Ask for help, the person comes. And so this was the first coach that I've worked with,
Mm.
and she was having a vision board workshop. And so I go to the vision board workshop and I didn't know what to put on my vision board, right? I'm looking around, all these other people, which happen to be all women, were flipping through magazines, cutting out things like feverishly gluing things and I'm like flipping. I don't know what I want on this vision board.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Because you spend all this time, I had spent all this time compromising,
Mm.
ignoring my intuition, ignoring what I really wanted to do. So then I didn't know what I wanted anymore.
Yeah.
Right. So I worked with her. She came up to me and she's like, what's going on here? Let's meet and talk more about this individually. So that was the next step.
Finding what you actually want. I know. And that's huge, isn't it? When you go, oh my gosh, I've been pressed and I don't even know what I want, and
Mhm.
that can then trigger a whole lot of responses. It's almost like, shouldn't I know? Why don't I know? What is wrong with me? Why does everybody else seem to know? And then even if I did know, what am I allowed to do that? Is that just a dream?
Mhm.
It's that a release of, but if I put that out, if I actually find it and articulate it and put it out to the universe,
Mhm.
then what does that mean and what's the consequence of that? So
Mhm.
although people go, vision boards are really, just a bit light and girly and maybe fluffy, they're
Mhm.
actually super powerful because they
Mhm.
trigger incredible responses, like you
Right.
had. That's like
Yeah.
just staring at a blank vision board and go, I don't know, you
I
know.
don't know what I want. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I know. Fascinating. Okay, so then you suddenly realize, okay, you've got a coach. So the value of a coach, huge,
Mhm.
absolutely
Yeah.
huge. A coach that resonates with you, that actually wants to find your journey, not just to teach you things. Okay,
Mhm.
find out who your true self is, and then go on the next journey. So then you then started, is that when you then started your hypnotherapy and your Reiki and your other courses? Was it more directed then, which is all still a bit medically rooted,
A
isn't
little
it, with
bit.
this
Yeah, it's a
heart
little
of being
bit
a
there.
doctor? But you
Yeah.
didn't suddenly go bold on the vision board and went, you know what, I've always wanted to be a doctor, I'm going to become a doctor.
Yeah, no, I did not do that. No. There's so much denial of myself and who I was that I had to work through first. And so she used NLP
Yeah,
and what came through our work together was the sense of back to that psychology,
yeah,
right? And so I applied to go to graduate school to be a therapist. I
yeah.
got in, took the GRE after so many years of school. I
Study, study,
started
study. Oh
study, 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 started my degree, finished the first semester, and then my husband says we have to move.
my no.
And that was like, someone just pulled the rug out from under me and I landed on my butt, like just like, what is happening here? I thought this was what I was supposed to do.
Yeah,
And why is the universe against me here?
yeah,
Right. So we moved. Now I live in California. We moved to California and I took a couple jobs and then worked with called her again. And I was like, okay, I don't know what to do. And so that's how we came up with the initial certification that I did, which
yeah.
was a coaching certification. And that started. And then I went to a conference from Hay House and I met this woman that did and was starting a hypnosis course and regression course.
Mm.
And so I said, well, I'm going to work with you. And then I started training with her. And so that's how the process started. And it was like, as I was moving forward, a door would open.
Mm.
Right. And so if a door closed, instead of banging on it and trying to like shove it open, I would stop and say, well, why is this door closed? Is this where I'm meant to be? Is
Yeah,
this where I'm meant to go?
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a brilliant learning, which sounds simple, but that's it. You can be spending so much time getting frustrated with the closed door, getting angry at the situation,
Mm-hmm.
just fighting it, going, this is just not fair, and all your time and energy. And it might not be fair. There's plenty of things that
Mm-hmm.
are not fair, right? But
Sure.
then when
Yeah.
you suddenly lean into the future and look for opportunity, that's right. Suddenly there are many doors, and sometimes you even create your own door, you know.
Yes. Which is kind of like what we've done, right? In our
Yeah,
own lives,
exactly.
right? It's like, well,
Exactly.
there's no door that I really fit in or box or whatever, right? So I'm going to create my own.
Yeah, that's right.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I've done even with this podcast. I then get to
Mm-hmm.
meet women from all around the world, on my online Facebook community. It's just like, well, create a new door, create an opportunity. What do you want? And then go, well, have I found what I want? No. So I'll even just create a new thing and see where that goes. And then as you lean into that, you'll suddenly, the whole world opens in this new door, so it's amazing. And then within a very short period of time, you'll realize I haven't even thought of that other closed door. It's just so yesterday, right? What was huge and all consuming then becomes, irrelevant, because the new and the focus as you lean into the future is just so much more exciting. Yeah.
Yes. And as you lean into where you're being directed, right? And so being part of that is continuing to be in touch with my intuition, making sure that I'm staying connected as much as possible, which I have to say this year has been challenging.
Yes.
Yes.
Very challenging. Very challenging. How do you work with the hypnotherapy and the regression therapy? How does that help you, and how do you help people with that?
Yeah. So according to the training that I went through, 90% depends who you ask. So between 70 and 90% of our thought patterns are programmed by the time we're 7 or 8 years
Yeah.
old.
Yeah.
Right. So the hypnosis and the regression is designed to get past that conscious layer into the subconscious to help release some of those beliefs, release some of those things that we tell ourselves that they're all stories.
Yeah, of course.
Right. So to help release some of that. So I use it in conjunction with coaching. I don't just do hypnosis or regression because
Right.
there's a processing that I found is really necessary after.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So it's interrelated. And then
Mhm.
how do you use the Reiki? How have you implemented that?
So a lot of clients that I attract tend to have some, because they're sensitive and empathic, right? So they tend to have this tendency of anxiety, depression continuum somewhere on there. And so the Reiki is an energetic way to help release some of the energy, right? It's, the way it's just to align all your chakras so the energy is flowing,
Yeah.
right? So I will use that in a session with a client. Um, I do distance Reiki
Mm-hmm.
and distance hypnosis and distance regression, which is how this teacher trained me.
Right.
Right. So, which is great because I can use this like a medium like this,
Yeah.
especially now. Right.
I know. Very handy. Now we're all living on Zoom.
Yes, exactly. And so it's like, I didn't know at the time.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
can do hypnosis on Zoom.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
amazing. Wow.
And I found when I went through, because I had to experience it if I'm going to do it.
Of
Right. So
course.
yeah. So, in some ways it can be a lot easier because the person is already relaxed. They're in their own home environment. So
Yeah.
there's a layer that you don't have to go under,
Yeah.
right? That's already there. That protection, a little bit of that protection is less.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
only challenge can be if they're home with a bunch of people. So they have to make sure they put the boundary and say, leave me alone for this
Yeah.
time,
Make
things
sure
like
they're not
that.
distracted. Yeah.
Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fascinating. Fascinating. So now you've set up a full coaching business that you can
Mhm.
incorporate all of these aspects of the stepping stones that you've done. You've acquired these through your journey, this
Yes.
skill set and these passions, and they're actually all interrelated and are able to be used in a very therefore unique coaching business, which is great.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I get to use all of that. I am a person that gets bored, as you can imagine, with all the training and stuff. So if I just did the same thing all the time, every day, did the same teachings with everybody all the time, every day, that's not fun for me. So I love the challenge, right? The challenge of, well, what's this client going to need,
Yes.
right? What can I bring in here, right? So that's actually part of the fun of this and the joy of it to see the person transform themselves, because I just believe that I'm a conduit for divine,
Yeah.
and so that I'm just like this person. So I always have that prayer before a session that please allow me to be, your vessel for your energy and what this person needs.
Yeah.
Guide me to what this person needs. So,
Mm. How does a woman get to a stage and call themselves an empath? There's a lot of women who know I'm an empath. What does that mean for those who
yeah.
don't know what that means?
Yeah, it's become really interesting, especially these last few months. I see it everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I figured out I was a highly sensitive person, which is a temperament that the psychologist Dr. Elaine Aron figured out is present in about 15 to 20% of the population and in cross species. And so the way to describe that easily is that your nervous system is on high alert, right? It's like someone turned up the volume.
Yeah.
Okay. And so you process the world differently
Mm.
and you're designed that way. An empath is a highly sensitive person, but really focused on the sensing piece, the energetic piece. Like I can sense the energy, I can sense how a person's feeling, right? And so I can walk into a room and I feel the room's energy,
Mm.
right?
Okay.
I can feel, and even when I'm in a session with clients, if I'm connected, because I have to connect, I have to take that time. And sometimes, I'm human. I don't do such a great job of that, right? But if I'm connected, I can actually feel. And I've told a client, I'm feeling this really tight constriction in your throat, or I'm feeling, and they'll say, "How did you know?"
Yeah.
Right? So
Yeah.
things like that. And so there's actually a psychiatrist, I believe she's a psychiatrist, Dr. Judith Orloff, that goes deeper into empaths and the types of empaths. So she says there's several types of empaths too.
Right. Okay.
Mhm.
And do you think because more and more people are coming out, I don't know if I've entered this new world of people calling themselves empaths or if it's actually um, increasing people's increased awareness of themselves, and then they're now able to say, yeah, this is how I see things,
Yeah.
because I must admit, like 5 years ago, I don't think I had anyone say to me, "Oh, that's because I'm an empath," or whatever, And then now I feel like, there's so many people, they'll even, have Facebook groups about it, or
Mhm.
communities about it, and then a line, and I'm like going, wow, is it becoming more popular, or is it actually just an awareness? My feeling
Yeah.
is it's just an awareness of
Yeah.
it, with the transformation of women just becoming more empowered and more in tune with who they are, you know?
Yeah, I do sense that it's that, right? I don't know for sure, right?
Mm.
Because I haven't met every single person or there's no studies on it.
Right.
But I will say that there's definitely a higher level of awareness in the last few years.
Mm.
So um, before, when I said I was empathic or as an empath, people had no clue what that was. It was not really looked as a positive, right? It wasn't looked as the superpower that
Mm.
it can be, because it
Yeah.
can be. It can also be the opposite if you're not aware of how you're showing up in the world and being mindful of how you are with people and how open you are and things like that. So it's really
Yeah.
important to be aware of that. And I think people are aware and it's more accepted now
Mm.
than before.
How can it be a superpower?
Well, it really serves me when I'm working with clients,
Mm.
right? I can really go deep with the client and almost feel the emotions they're feeling and sensing what they're feeling. And so when I'm working with them, I can ask them about those things. And it
Mm.
just, when I ask, it opens up something.
Yeah.
And they're like, "How did you know?" And there's this like relaxation that happens and this openness that happens that wouldn't have happened if I wasn't able to first sense it and then articulate it, because that's the other part of
Yeah.
it, right? And then it can help you in your life, right? When you're with people. I have a lie detector. It's an internal lie detector. If I listen to it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's
Okay.
just a couple ways that it could be used as a superpower.
Yeah, I love that. I'm all into having superpowers. You use them as much as you can, and I love how unique we are and how we approach. Someone else will come into a room and just automatically be ready to share the story and what they have to
Hmm.
say, whereas someone else can be just sitting there even before you said anything and be just watching your body language
Yeah,
and
yeah,
feeling the energy and the tone before anything's said, and have an amazing perception of what is actually going on. I think it's
yeah,
just so fascinating. And that's right. And the
hmm,
surprise by the recipient. How do you know that
yeah.
already? Therefore, it's incredible. Absolutely incredible. So how has your family responded now to your life journey? What,
Oh, yeah.
you suddenly jumped 20 plus years.
Yeah.
And now
Mhm.
you've gone and had this journey and you're really happy. So how has
Yeah.
that meant culturally? How's it affected family relationships?
Well, so when I told my mother that I'm going to be a life coach, she's told me, "No, you're not."
Mm.
Okay. And so that was 6, 7 years ago,
Hmm.
right? And so there's still this kind of sense of me realizing that I don't need to share details with
Mm.
everyone all the time. I don't need her to approve of what I'm doing, right? And so she's kind of accepted that I'm doing this, doesn't really ask too much. And I think it's this unwritten thing that we have, agreement we have, that I'm going to do my way, I'm going to do me,
Yeah.
and that's it. So it hasn't made things uh, a bad. We don't have a bad relationship. I think we have a pretty good relationship, and it's this understanding of this is how we're going to work together right now. Yeah. And then the extended family, some people will accept you and some won't, right? And so I think this happens even for people that don't have these big families. There's a when you are changing and when you are shifting, sometimes people don't like it,
Yeah. Exactly.
right? And sometimes people are not meant to be in your life anymore,
Mm.
right? Maybe that soul contract is over,
Mm.
right? Whatever that is. And that's the way I look at it. That's one of the things I read with in Carolyn Meiss's work, right? About the soul contracts. And if the soul contract is over, it's over,
Yeah.
right?
Exactly. You
And
don't have
so
to spend all that energy maintaining it when it's not adding value,
yeah,
to you, and you're probably not adding real value to them.
yeah.
It's just energy. It's just, emotional
Mm,
energy that has had its time, you know.
yeah. Mhm.
And then that's a brave thing. It's a bold moment when you realize, yeah, that's right. And it doesn't discredit what you had before. There may have been many great times there, but you've moved on, and that's okay. I think it's a really interesting point of what you said with your mom, because I think a lot of people will have that with their families of, you get to a stage and you go, I don't need your approval. I think it's amazing how powerful the relationship is between parent and child, and
Mm,
how you can be respectful and you can and be loving, but you don't have to have their approval for what you're doing, and you also don't need to throw it in your face, their face, so that's right.
mhm,
Sometimes I've noticed that, they won't ask you about your job, or they won't ask you what you're doing, and it's because they don't know how to process it and they're not happy
mhm,
about it. So you therefore don't need to push that. You can
mhm,
actually, just as you said, not give all the details. It's not
mhm,
not lying, it's not whatever, it's just like it doesn't add any value, it doesn't help them, because they might not be able to come around to that, but they still love you and want to support you, and in all these other aspects of your life. So it's picking your battles, isn't it? It's
mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, it's picking your battles for sure.
Mm.
And sharing that those deep parts of yourself, like I say, sharing your soul,
Mm.
not everybody not needs to hear that, but you really have to see who's worthy of that, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
So, and I love my parents. We've had this relationship where there's this understanding, and that's how that relationship is. And so
Mm.
there's that acceptance of this is where they are.
Mm.
I'm
Mm.
trying to am I wanting them to be someone they're not? Am I trying to change who they are?
Mm.
Right? No. It's like this is who they are. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
Let's talk culture then too. Now you've got two boys.
Yes. Yes, two
um,
boys, yes.
Two boys. So how are they now aligned, since you've had a journey with culture of where do you belong, a sense of belonging?
Mhm.
Then how are they in the next generation along? How much have you brought that but family background into their life? Do they sense it in the same way as you? How has that impacted them?
So, definitely had a part of my life, I would say, when we moved here to the Bay Area in California, where I was feeling this deep, almost cultural resentment, right? Of like, why don't women have power? In
Mm.
Hinduism, there's these goddesses,
Mm.
right, that are revered, but women are not important. And, there was all this sense of like, what do I teach these boys
Yeah. Yeah.
that I feel aligned with,
Mm.
right? And am I just going to repeat, right,
Yes.
what I learned? And so, I've taken them when we were in Texas to the religion classes and things like that. And then here I moved and they were not available easily. Interesting, right? Door closing.
Mhm.
So I teach them some of the major cultural traditions, the meaning behind it. Why do we do these things? Um, Really more spiritual conversations.
Mhm.
And there's only so much, so they're both teenagers now, that they're open to hearing,
Mhm.
right? And so I
Mhm.
keep reminding myself, they're hearing you, they're listening. They may not respond right now. They may not do what you're saying because they're individuating, and
Yeah.
that's their job right now, right?
Mhm.
And so, don't take it personally. So I teach them as much about culture. We go to South Texas to my parents' house during the holidays. They see my mother with her temple, all the prayers she does,
Yeah.
so they do see that. So
Yeah.
they have some grounding in that, but
Mm.
not like I grew up with it.
Yeah. They're not aligned to a specific community who most of their friends should be in that work in that community. And
Hmm.
that's right, a generation later. True.
Yeah, and I mean, here the great thing about this area is that it's so multicultural,
Yeah.
right? So we, as unlike my parents who only socialized with Indians and mainly Sindhis, right?
Yeah.
Now they've expanded beyond that, but mainly Indian people. Um, I just am friends with whoever,
Yeah, exactly.
right? So like
It's
it's
very much like that in Australia too. It's just like, well,
yeah,
we were all from somewhere. It's just,
yeah.
multicultural country or area particularly. So what a fascinating journey. I'm loving this. I love the impact of culture and the whole role of women. It's been a fascinating journey for you. So what do you see as yourself being a successful woman? This is called women. um, what does success look like for you, for a woman now moving
Mhm.
forward?
So success for me is multi-layered, right? So one for me, it's really been a high priority of mine to be a good mother and to make sure that I raise men that are not sexist
Mm.
and that go out into the world and do their work and what they're meant to do. So that's a big journey for me. So even if I can help these two humans, right,
Mm-hmm.
to skip some of this, like, oh, I have to do this because my mom says, versus like, this is who I am, right? So
Yes.
opening that. So that is for me really important for my success
Yeah.
in my professional life. It is the sense of that I continue to grow, I'm continuing to serve clients, right? I'm generating income that is satisfying to me and I'm able to contribute. And so those are all the things that are my definition of success. And then in the personal life, being surrounded by people that are aligned,
Mm.
right? So, friendships with people that see me, hear me, and they may not fully get me, and that's okay also, right?
Yeah.
But just
So
those type of people versus, well, I need to be friends with certain types of people and all that. So success for me is that multi-layered
yeah.
piece. And then the spiritual part is really important. It's just stay connected spiritually.
Yeah, you're
Mm.
very balanced. I love it. I can feel it. Everyone listening would be like, yes, this lady's got her balance right. And what are you
Yeah.
continuing to develop and grow? What does growth then mean to you, Kavita?
Well, still continuing to learn. So I'm always taking more courses, reading more, learning more. So that's always going to be there.
Mm.
And then I'm working on more ways that I can serve, right? There's only so much that I can do individually. So I'm working on creating some groups. Um, so yeah, so those are some of the things that I'm working on. I'm also continuing. I have a blog, videos, just ways as much as I can teach, because, that teacher part of me is still there.
Yes. And
So,
that's what I love when I unpack these journeys, that the things that you start, you all still did them for a reason, right? So even
yes.
though you're skirting on that tightrope of, okay, well, I'm sort of compromising and it's not really, there's still an element of this natural tendency, because that's why out of all the things you still chose, teaching, or then, the medically aligned subject. So it's not surprising that, you suddenly go, and I still actually love being a teacher. I like using those skills. It's just, it's just fine tuning and honing it into an area that actually is your total purpose, So
Yes.
I love that. And I love that you are, continuing to, once you've found that, to actually just go, how am I going to grow? I'm going to keep growing and expanding in this area to become, more aligned with it, more empowered to be an authority in this space, be able to help my clients in the best way possible, and I just think that's fantastic. So how do people find you, Kavita? They're listening to this and they want to reach out to you.
Yeah, so they can go to my website. My business is called The Enlightened Heart. The Enlightened Heart. It's theenlightenedheart.pro. I do have a gift that people can receive. It's called the 5 Keys to Overcoming Overwhelm as a highly sensitive person and empath. So, if they go to my website, they can go free gift and receive that. So, yeah, so that's the best way. And you
Awesome.
figure out how you want to stay in touch.
Great. Definitely. And we all love free gifts. So check that out. I will have your website on my podcast platform and also my YouTube channel. And I wish you all the best for your future success.
Oh, thank you. This was so great. Thank you for having me on your podcast. I really appreciate this.
Pleasure. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Memoirs of Successful Women. You can find me at anniegibbins.com, where you can download my free resources, get connected on social, and check out my online magic transformation program. If you love this show, feel free to subscribe to future episodes and, of course, share it with your friends. I'll see you again soon, and until then, happy podcasting.